Alright, so I made a mistake! One mistake! And a man start over! Do I have to keep on paying?
Hello. In this video, I'm going to talk about your options for Oki after a juggle. I'm going to talk about your basic Oki options, and then I'm going to run through a whole bunch of setups that you can use to maximize damage from a launch, as long as you have a basic read on how the other player will get up. Asuka has a lot of options for Oki, and she really wants to get the most out of every launch and knockdown she can get. So working on Oki and familiarizing yourself with some of these setups is something I really recommend, because you'll get a lot of extra damage with them. I'm going to start with her basic vanilla Oki, no setup, just knockdown into wake up game. If you're new to Asuka or you aren't familiar with all of your basic Oki options, then this should be really helpful for you. During a juggle, if you're going for Oki, the enders you'll use will tend to end with down forward 3, like that, or forward 2 3, or forward 2 1. You can also do basic Oki after ending a combo or a mini combo with forward 2 1, or with forward 3 plus 4, but after these you have less frames to work with, so it's a little more tricky. These are enders that give you all the frames you need to apply Asuka's basic Oki. Her other enders tend to be worse for Oki, or they're more specific to wall carry. This is what you'll do after a full juggle or any random knockdown that the other player can tech roll out of. I have a couple of main groups of options depending on how you want to maximize or mix up your Oki, and I'm going to start with what I'll call the simple mix-up. So the simple mix-up is 3 plus 4 versus down back 3. I call this the simple mix-up because it's a mid-low mix-up where both of the hits hit grounded. So it's pretty well rounded, and you don't really have to make many guesses when you're applying the simple mix-up. I did this a lot in Tekken 7, not so much in Tekken 8 because you've got better options now, but these moves still have their merits, and this Oki is still pretty easy to apply. Basically, after your ender, you'll approach and delay these options so they're aligned properly, and you'll pick one. You can track tech rolls a little bit better if you do a little sidestep before running in. And what that'll do is it'll help either of those options clip the other player if they try to sidestep right out of a tech roll. These two attacks are weak to sidestep right, FYI. If the other player stays on the ground, they will get hit. By both options, of course. If they side roll on the ground, these attacks might whiff, but that's okay, you'll be safe. If they tech or wake up, then depending on your timing, what the other player is going to do is they can either guess mid or low, or they can try to sidestep or interrupt you with a wake up attack or something fast. If you think that they'll wake up attack in particular, what you'll want to do is you'll want to bait it out and whiff punish it. So you'll do your combo, but you won't run in all the way and do your ender, you'll just wait for them to attack and launch them for it. The other cool thing about the simple mix though is that 3 plus 4 will low crush the wake up low kick, so that's pretty neat. The simple mix-up is pretty easy to apply, but it is a bit weak because you have to approach and delay these options so much for them to be reliable against tech rolls and back quick rolls and side steps and stuff. And it's easy for you to get interrupted while you're doing all that. I like to recommend this to beginners because you only have to remember 2 moves, and this works pretty well when the other player doesn't vary their options much, but it does sort of require that the other player respects you and sits still. Otherwise, you'll be giving up your advantage state a lot by not approaching and trying to bait the other player's behavior. It's still a good choice for Oki, but you have some better options. For the purposes of my content, like my guides and stuff, I'm gonna call this next set of moves the Golden Oki. And this involves while running 1+2, a sprint into a standing 3, and dash forward 3+4. Basically, this set of moves is going to turn most knockdowns into a sort of 50-50 between whether the other player gets off the ground or stays down on the ground. If the other player tech rolls, or back quick rolls, or stands up, or anything like that, then when you apply a Golden Oki, they'll have to block while running 1+2, or your sprint into a 3. And both of those, when timed properly, are going to track tech rolls and sidesteps and stuff really well, and they won't be able to be interrupted either. If the other player stays on the ground and doesn't try to stand up or anything, then they'll get hit by the dash forward 3+4 before they can wake up attack or anything like that. And the dash is there so that this dash forward 3+4 will also track side rolls. So they're not going to be able to get away from that if they stay on the ground. The only thing that'll tend to beat you is a quick recovery when the other player is in a face-up feet towards state, which is this typical knockdown state that you usually see where they do this get up ukemi and they kick you. You don't have to worry about this after enders that use down forward 3 or forward 2-3, because that sets up a different knockdown where the other player can only do that forward roll. But if you're gonna go for the Golden Oki after a 4-2-1 ender, for example, then you do need to be aware of the quick recovery and ideally be prepared to bait it out and whiff punish if you think that that's gonna happen. It's not common, but some players online do it. It is tricky to whiff punish it, but you can do it with the right timing. So there you go. In terms of while running 1+2 versus standing 3, this is your 50-50. This is your Oki mix-up, duck or don't duck. While running 1+2 is plus on block and gives you chip damage on block. So this basically functions sort of like an aggressive low, that the other player has to crouch if they don't want to take damage or be subject to more pressure afterwards. Standing 3 is your mid mix. This is hit confirmable mid for a lot of damage. It does 34 damage, which is really good. And the 3 itself is safe on block. And its extension can give you some mental frame advantage because it's very rewarding on counter hit and stuff. So you can turn that mental frame advantage into more pressure as well. So that's the whole basis for Golden Oki, but I do have a couple other extra things to note for your information. First is that forward 3+4, a dash forward 3+4, can tend to track tech rolls to Asuka's left, depending on your timing, but as you can see, it can still whiff against tech rolls, so you do need to keep that in mind. So you can either delay it more, like draw out the dash more to compensate so that the kick will connect on any tech roll, or you can just make it a point to only do the dash forward 3+4 if you're confident that the other player won't tech roll. The other thing is that you're going to need to make sure that you adjust your timing based on whether the other player is tech rolling or back quick rolling, if they're doing either of those options. If they back quick roll, you're going to have to dash in further so that your while running 1+2 and 3 will connect. So I think this is easy enough to react between the tech roll and the back quick roll. At least it feels that way to me. So I think that this will just come with a little bit of practice, adjusting your timing based on what you see. And if you're doing it properly, then in any situation, the other player will have a very difficult time pressing a button to interrupt you or whatever. Wrapping up Asuka's basic Oki, I've just got a few more important points to touch on. And the first is that if you know that after a combo, the other player is going to tech or otherwise get up off the ground and probably respect you, then you can approach and apply a power mix-up. So, like that, your power mix-up would be 1+2 as your launching mid, or forward 1 as like a functional heat engager for a lot of damage, and it's plus unblock, so that's also good as a power mid. And down 1+2 as your power low of choice. If you're timing with dashing in towards the other player and getting the right alignment for your moves to connect and pressing your button are all immaculate, it can be pretty tricky for the other player to interrupt or sidestep any of these options, especially if they tech roll. You just have to have a pretty good idea of how the other player is going to recover after your juggle. And I tend to maximize my Oki for continuation, personally, so I don't go for the power mix-up much. Also very important is that you will always want to be prepared to just stand back and wait if you think that the other player is going to do a wake-up kick. Because if they do, you can launch punish it on whiff. Your other basic Oki options are going to interrupt these wake-up kicks, and that's all well and good if you're using them properly. But obviously, the full launch punish is incredibly good. You get a bunch of damage, and it's going to really make the other player think twice about pressing buttons on the ground. With the ender that I've been using, the other player actually isn't able to use spring attacks or recovery kicks. So you only have to worry about whiff punishing the wake up mid and low kick, but after certain other knockdowns, if the other player does have access to the spring kicks, to whiff punish the spring kicks, you're going to be reacting to the animation and not to the whiff. I just wanted to mention that because spring kicks can be kind of difficult to whiff punish, but you can do it with practice. The final thing that I'd like to touch on is that after a forward 2-3 or a down forward 3 ender, if the other player does a back quick roll, you can backroll catch them. Because after those knockdowns, or after those moves, they're in a face down feet towards knockdown. So if you notice that the other player likes to back quick roll after these enders, you can get a full relaunch with a properly timed sprint forward 2. Like that. While running 1+2 will also hit pretty reliably, it won't be blockable, but forward 2 is your go-to on a back quick roll read. So with all of that boring normal Oki out of the way, I'm gonna start now getting into Asuka's juicy setups. She's got a bunch of setups that you can use to maximize damage from her combos by gambling on a mix-up of sorts, like a 50-50, sometimes a little bit more. All of these will work with any of your standard combo routes. It doesn't matter if you're doing 2-1-2 or down back 1-4 for your tornado, all of these setups will work. Before I break down all of these setups, I do want to say I do my best when I'm talking about these situations where you have all these different options to concisely list out the options and try to summarize what they do for you and why you would do them. It's really hard sometimes, since all of these options that I talk about, there's a lot of how and why behind like how they work, what they do for you, why they work, and why you would do them. So if it's hard for you to follow what I'm talking about, I do have a written version of this video's synopsis linked in the description of this video. So that might be easy for some of you to follow and digest because it's organized better in like bullet point form with paragraphs describing the nuances of the individual options. So check that out if you think it'll help. We'll start with Asuka's classic unblockable 50-50. After a tornado, sidestep right into forward 3 will essentially force the other player to guess between tech rolling and not tech rolling. This interaction with wake-up attacks can be a bit uncertain depending on your timing out of the sidestep, but in general, Unblockable 50/50 is an easy and strong option to get extra damage from a combo against players with predictable getup habits. So these are your two options for the Unblockable 50/50. First, if you think that the other player is going to tech roll, you will sidestep right into forward 3 and you will hold the forward 3 for the Unblockable. If they tech roll, this will hit them and they can't do anything about it. They can't sidestep, they can't interrupt it. This will also hit them if they back quick roll. This will whiff though if the other player stays on the ground or does a recovery kick. And it'll sometimes whiff if the other player spring kicks. It'll sometimes hit, but it's dependent on your timing and it's a bit weird. If you think that the other player isn't going to tech roll, instead, you will cancel the forward 3 and do a down forward 3 to pick up. And you will pick up into a combo, which I'll display on the screen as I demonstrate it for you now. So that's what you do if you think that the other player isn't going to tech roll. This will whiff the down forward 3 if the other player does tech roll, but it will hit grounded if the other player back quick rolls. So you won't get the pickup combo, but it'll still hit for extra damage. The trick for the forward 3 timing is to do forward 3 near the end of Asuka's sidestep movement. That way you can time the Unblockable to hit properly after the other player tech rolls. If you do it too early, then the other player, it'll just whiff while they're invincible, but that times it properly so that it hits and they can't move. Timing it properly with the sidestep movement will also make it so that the down forward 3 pickup combo doesn't whiff due to a weird axis. This way, you get this straight axis and the combo works perfectly. Next is her Tailspin setup, and this one is my favorite, I think. It's pretty easy to use and very effective. So, after a deep forward, forward, forward Tailspin, after her tornado, like that, you have various options that you can apply without using any resources like gusto or heat to punish certain getup options. I'm going to elaborate on these a little bit more, some of them, because there's a lot to talk about, honestly. But I'm just going to list out the basic 3 options that you can start with. This setup is great. First, do the Tailspin into forward 3+4. And what this is going to do is it's going to tell you what the other player does without putting you at much risk. In this case, they tech rolled, and forward 3+4 is totally safe on whiff if they tech roll, so that's totally fine. If they don't tech roll, so if they stay on the ground or they back quick roll, then forward 3+4 will hit for extra damage. So that does more damage than your normal enders. So this is pretty good to go for if you know that the other player won't tech and you just want some extra damage. But the big thing that you get out of forward 3+4 is the knowledge of, does the opponent like to tech roll or do they like to not tech roll? So with that in mind, here are your other 2 main options. First, if the other player is going to tech roll, after the Tailspin, you can do ultimate tackle. And it'll flip their tech roll. If they don't tech roll, let's say they back quick roll instead, you can do a dash forward 2. And a dash forward 2, not only will it hit grounded if they don't tech, but you can see it will also back roll catch. If they back quick roll, a properly timed forward 2 is unblockable. And this will also launch them if they try to stand straight up from a knockdown, and it will also launch them if they wake up kick. So The dash forward 2, although it doesn't do as much damage as forward 3+4 on its own when hitting grounded, dash forward 2 has that coverage, and it has that chance for you to get a whole relaunch if they back quick roll. Before I start to elaborate on the nuances of the options after a tailspin, I do want to be clear about how you should be doing the tailspin. You want to be doing the forward, forward, forward as deep as possible. The reason that you want to do that is because the key charge tackle after the tailspin in this setup only barely reaches, especially if you're doing the 2-1-2 route. You want to get all of the forward movement that you can get with that forward, 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 so that your ultimate tackle will connect and be a valid mix-up option here. The way that I do this, me personally, is I will do a forward dash cancel into forward, forward, forward. And this is kind of tricky. It takes some practice. But if you look at my inputs on the side there, you can see that I'm kind of doing a like a Korean forward dash. So I do my 2 forward inputs to dash, then I will tap crouch to cancel the dash. And when I release crouch, I'll still be holding forward, so when I tap forward again, I'll get a dash. Like that. If you do that, you'll move forward just a little bit more than you normally could if you were to just draw out the dash from a forward, forward, forward. So on to elaborating on key charge tackle. There's a little bit to this that I think is helpful to know to understand why the setup works like this and why I have it set up this way. So what you do is after tailspin, key charge immediately after forward, forward, forward. And as much as you can, delay the 1+2 inputs so that you can commit to the tackle later. And what that's actually going to do is that if you delay the 1+2 input as much as you can for the tackle, that will slightly increase the tip range of the tackle. And that, along with the forward dash cancel, is what allows this tackle to reach even after the 2-1-2 route. Like so. Even with the extra pushback, that will still be a valid mix-up if you're doing this properly. The other thing about this, with that being said, is that so you can do this if you just read a tech roll from the other player. That's all well and good. If the other player doesn't tech roll, though, if they back quick roll or stay on the ground, then the ultimate tackle will whiff, of course, and the other person can just launch you for free. But you don't actually have to guess. You can actually react to the tech roll. I have some notes here for the math behind this. If you're interested, I'm going to read them out now. Ultimate tackle is 62 frames. The tackle input can be delayed up to 45 frames, but the tackle will always come out on the same frame. In this setup in particular, the other player tech rolls on frame 30 of your key charge when you buffer it properly. So you technically have 15 frames to confirm whatever they're doing on the ground. With that said, confirming a tech roll is difficult, but it's not out of the question. For reference, 3-1, which is a hit confirmable string, can be delayed by 14 frames. So you're reacting to this in 14 frames. When it comes to the other player's tech options, back quick roll and any wake up options are going to be noticeably delayed compared to a tech roll or a forward roll for that matter, which will also get clipped by ultimate tackle. So what you can do is you can drill with the opponent's tech option on shuffle and practice committing to the tackle when you see any movement on the ground before a particular timing. So if you see them twitch on the ground like early, then you know to press 1+2 for the tackle. You don't have to practice like reading the Backroll animation in particular. You just watch to see them move. It's hard, but you can do it. Like that. Let's see if I can get it done on like a back quick roll and not commit to it. Try it one more time. Okay, well I fucked it up, but you can do it, I promise you. It's just difficult. I'm just doing it on the spot here. This is unscripted, so I'm not going to be able to do it on command. The reason this is really cool though, and this is another aspect of this setup, let's say they don't tack roll, they just stand up. Like they stand the ground and they stand straight up. And I key charge here. Okay, well I still have them on tech roll, but you can see that there's a significant distance between me and the other player. If I key charge and I don't commit to the tackle, then I'm relatively safe out here. They can't launch me right away. And the other player, since they're getting up still, and I believe I'm actionable earlier than they are with key charge. This is a whole situation here. I haven't really played with this situation much, but the other player might be hesitant to rush you down because you can only just back 3. If they do hesitate, you can run up on them and apply some pressure in like Super Saiyan Asuka mode, since you got this key charge and everything is an auto counter hit. So this is what's most interesting to me about the Tailspin setup, is the implications of the ultimate tackle and visually confirming the tech roll. And if you don't see a tech roll, just like recovering with key charge here and, you know, doing something with that. I don't know. What will you do? Who knows? So forward 2, dash forward 2 as an option. Definitely not as convoluted as the key charge tackle. I will say that I personally tend to just default to forward 3+4 for the easy damage when I think that the other player isn't going to tech roll, and I'll just mix that up with the ultimate tackle if I think that they are going to tech roll. But if they don't tech roll, then the dash forward 2, in addition to hitting grounded, compared to forward 3+4, also has the potential to launch a bunch of the other players' get up options, like I mentioned earlier. So if they back quick roll, for example, and you're timing your dash forward 2 properly, you get a full relaunch. Same deal if they don't tech and they just stand straight up. You get that back turn launch, but it's still good. You'll also counter hit launch wake up kicks. And this is all in addition to when they stay down. So you stand to gain a lot more out of dash forward 2 if they're not tech rolling compared to just defaulting to forward 3+4. So it's kind of like an advanced option. In terms of timing your dash forward 2 so that it hits a back quick roll and all that, the way that I do it is I do like this forward 2. So it's actually a full sprint into forward 2, but I have an extra forward in there for timing purposes. It adds like a rhythm aspect to it. It's a lot easier to do when I'm not talking. But yeah, like that. If you do it like that, sprint forward 2, then you'll get it. Just a little bit of practice will do the trick. It's not that hard. One more thing. about the dash forward 2 that I almost forgot to mention. There's so much to keep track of. If the other player tech rolls, you do die. It's death on whiff. So if you don't do it, if you know they're going to tech roll. Something worth mentioning about the dash forward 2 option is that depending on your timing, it can lose to side roll left. As far as I can tell, if you time it properly, like the same way you would if you were trying to catch a back roll, I believe it will still hit. Although it's kind of hard for me to tell. Yeah, so that's something that you need to take into consideration, is that your forward 2 might whiff if they side roll left. It's not likely that you're going to run into this. This side roll stuff is not really a matchup priority for anyone, but it can happen, so I wanted to throw that out there. So I've explained now your 3 default options for the Tailspin setup. That is forward 3 plus 4, which will hit if they don't tech roll, and it'll be safe on whiff if they do. That's for testing what the other player does on get up. You got your key charge tackle to hit them if they tech roll, and you got your dash forward 2 to hit them if they don't. You got a couple other options now that aren't as important, but they are cool, so I'm going to talk about them anyways. I'm going to go over them now. If the other player doesn't tech at all, so I have ground technique off, they're not going to tech roll or back quick roll. If they just stay on the ground, what you can do is a dash down forward 3 will pick up for a combo that is pretty tricky to do, but can be used to get extra damage if you know that they're going to stay on the ground, or to loop the tailspin setup Oki scenario, which is what makes this particular option really interesting on paper. I never do this because it's really hard. Just the pickup combo on its own is crazy hard. You have to do this tiny little micro dash 1 plus 4 after the down forward 3 for it to connect. And at that time it didn't even combo. If the other player tech rolled, it would have dropped. But that's what it looks like. You get 21, actually from that combo that I just did there, you'll get 30 damage. Let me see if I can do it. Yeah. Boom. So that's not too shabby. It's really hard though, but it is very swaggy. Beyond that though, if you do just the down forward 3 into micro dash 1 plus 4 and it hits, man, I'll explain that different pickup in just a sec here. Okay, well if it does hit, what will happen is that the frames and the pushback, the knockback from the combo, is exactly the same as after the tailspin. So if you do that, the down forward 3 pickup into 1 plus 4, which itself will do 21 damage, which still is not too shabby for what it is, then you can start over. You can do forward 3 plus 4, it'll hit them if they don't tech, it's safe on whiff if they do, ultimate tackle, dash forward 2, all this. And this all still works because when you do that pickup, timed properly there, the other player is still in that weird backwards state that you get after the tailspin, the face up, feet away, fufa. It's a callback. So all of the tailspin setup stuff will still work. It's all the same timing, and you can even do another dash down forward 3 and keep looping it over and over. The problem, again, is that it's really hard, the combo is really tough, and that pickup where you get the back turn pickup has to be timed in a particular way. If you're too early hitting it after the tailspin, you'll get a normal like face up feet towards launch, and then you're not going to be able to loop the tailspin setup the same as you would otherwise. So with all that said about dash down forward 3 as an option after the tailspin, the practicality of this option is still pretty unclear to me because it is just so much harder than defaulting to dash forward 2 or forward 3 plus 4 on a grounded player. But I do think that it's really, really interesting, especially being like a pickup loop on non-teching opponents that maintains the same powerful Oki. I think it's really cool and worth considering if in a far-flung future we are really, really grasping at straws for how to maximize this character. Who knows? The last option worth mentioning, I promise it's almost over with the tailspin setup, is just the 4-3 unblockable. So this is easy, but it is fake. So if they tech roll or they back quick roll and they don't try to avoid it, the unblockable will hit them and they can't interrupt it. They can only trade with it with a down jab if they tech roll. But if they do tech roll or back quick roll, in either case, it can be evaded with a sidestep left. Like that. So that'll work if they back quick roll too. So if you're doing this and the other player knows that they can just sidestep left to avoid it, then yeah, this isn't actually guaranteed. Although it is worth noting that if the other player is playing on player 2's side, they won't be able to sidestep left out of a tech roll. So there's that. That's cool. So this is easy damage against a player that just holds backwards after a combo or tech rolls all the time and is very hesitant or ill-informed on wake up in this situation. For the tailspin setup, I'd have just one last thing that I want to mention, and I promise that this is the last thing. I know that this section is getting very long. You can insert Heat Burst into your tailspin setup for extra damage and to allow you to end your combo in heat. And this is what that looks like. You do your deep forward, 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 micro dash Heat Burst, and forward, forward, forward again, and do your setup. Having heat is always handy, and along with the extra damage, you know, this is useful for that reason. But being in heat in particular can add sauce to your key charge option after tailspin because you'll have access to your heat smash. So say that you don't commit to the ultimate tackle because you don't visually confirm a tech roll or something like that. Heat Burst is a very scary option for Asuka when she's got a key charge because it's plus 10 on block and the other player is forced into a 50-50 launch between back 4 and down 3 plus 4. And I'm going to expand on that a little bit more in a later setup, but just to reiterate, you can insert Heat Burst into your tailspin setup to get you extra damage and put you in heat and give you some extra options. Next up is what I'm going to call the Plunge setup. So if you have Gusto, then after a Tornado, you run up 1 plus 2, and leverage that lengthy knockdown that you get, like the spike or whatever you would call it, for a really strong key charge setup. So you can use this to get crazy counter hit launches on the other player if it works out for you. So your first option here would be to just key charge and then do one of your guaranteed counter hit launches, an auto counter, I called it in my notes. So you do the combo, Plunge, heat charge, and if you back 4, it'll track both tech rolls and this can't be interrupted. What you can also do, if you feel like it, back 2 is also uninterruptible and will also track both tech rolls. And this can be neat if you are thinking about going into full crouch with your key charge in hand, so that you can do crazy stuff like guaranteed counter hit full crouch down forward 2. Really strong stuff. If the other player is going to respect you, like they're not going to try to interrupt you when you're doing your back 4 and stuff, you can low launch them with down back forward 3 and relaunch them that way. What you can also do is realign a little bit with a dash or something and do cans and launch that way, and that might be a little bit quicker too. If you think that the other player is going to back quick roll or wake up backwards, in which case like back 4 and stuff aren't going to reach them, then if you know that the other player is going to respect you, which does happen, people can tend to just stare at you like a deer in headlights when you're in key charge, you can just run them down and mix them up that way with your key charge. For a bit more coverage, you can just use key charge tackle as an option as well. So this will track all techs. You see it's tracking, it's reaching against the back quick roll. It will track the tech rolls. It will track a forward roll for that matter. It can also reach a wake up backwards, and it will hit stand up unless the other player's character has a really fast crush move like Asuka's cans. In that case, they can interrupt the key charge tackle, but not with any other attacks, and not with a traditional hop kick. This will lose if the other player does a properly timed wake-up attack. Or if they stay on the ground, it'll whiff and they can stand up and launch you. The wake-up attack, although it does interrupt you... Shoot. What? Oh, that's weird. Okay, well it did a tech roll for some reason there, but if you're thinking that like a human player is going to do that, it's unlikely because it's very weird to time to miss the tech roll window and then press a button to do a wake up attack that will interrupt you. So that's unlikely to happen. More likely is it'll whiff if they just stay on the ground. If you know that the other player isn't going to tech roll, what you can do is instead of key charge, do a delayed forward 3+4 for 21 grounded hit damage. This covers everything except tech roll. It'll also hit them if they back quick roll. You see I have that set here. And doing this is actually significantly more damage than the normal guaranteed forward 3+4. You see, that was guaranteed, and that only did 13 damage. The delayed one does 21. So that's a lot of extra damage. So you can use this to encourage the other player to tech roll during the plunge setup so you can get that fun key charge stuff, or just to take advantage of a player that you know consistently refuses to tech roll so that you can get extra damage. For the plunge setup, I've got a couple of notes that I want to mention. And the first is that, like with the Tailspin, you can also insert Heat Burst into the plunge setup ender for extra damage and to allow you to end in heat. And what you're going to do is you're going to do a deep forward 4, and then do the micro dash Heat Burst, and then do your plunge. And this is what that's going to look like. Then you do the plunge, and then you do your setup. This is a bit more potent than Heat Burst during the Tailspin setup because of the timing and spacing that you have after the plunge. So I actually talked about this in a bit more detail as its own setup, and I'll do that in a little bit. The other thing is that you can also plunge setup after a forward 1+2 heat dash in a combo. If you have heat active already going into your combo, just do the heat dash into a plunge. And it's the same exact setup, so you've got all your plunge options there. If you do heat burst and heat dash into a plunge in the same combo, you'll get a different hard knockdown instead. Like that. And that isn't the same setup, your options are different. I could make this its own section, but the options are simple, so I'm gonna rattle off your options here for this particular Oki situation. If after the knockdown, the other player stands up, does a wake up backwards, or does a wake up kick or a recovery kick, a standing 3 will hit them. So if they stand up or wake up backwards, they'll get bopped on the ground like that. If they do a wake up attack, a wake up kick, or a recovery kick, then this will interrupt it and you can hit confirm it, because it'll be uncounter hit. This will whiff if the other player does a spring kick. I'll show you what that looks like. Boom, and it just goes straight over them. This will also whiff if the other player stays on the ground or if they side roll. Alternatively, you can do back 4. Back 4, the other player will be able to block it if they stand straight up, but it does otherwise have the same coverage. It'll still hit them if they wake up backwards. It'll still hit them if they do a wake up kick or a recovery kick, but this has the benefit that it will also counter hit lunge, the wake up attacks, but it'll still whiff against spring kick. If the other player is going to just stay on the ground, or if they wake up backwards or do a wake up attack, then forward 2 will hit. Like so. This, if the other player can block this, if they stand straight up and they can punish you, and this will also whiff if the other player does a side roll left. If they do a wake up kick or a recovery kick, then they will get launched. Recovery kick will trade with forward 2, but you still get the launch. And if they spring kick, they'll just get flipped out of the air. Down forward 3 will also work alternatively against wake up attacks. And if they wake up backwards, and it's safe on block if the other player stands up and blocks. But it will whiff if the other player just stays on the ground, or if they side roll left. So that's a weird quirk of this. This won't hit grounded reliably, but if you're expecting them to do one of those other options that get countered by forward 2, it does still work pretty well. If you hit one of the wake up kicks, you can confirm it into a guaranteed dash forward 2. It will get interrupted by a recovery kick, but if they do a spring attack, you'll actually get a cool reset combo that looks like this. Very cool. Finally, if you know that the other player is just going to stay on the ground or side roll, then a dash forward 3+4 is your strongest option. This can be blocked if they stand up or wake up backwards, and this can be interrupted by wake up attacks. The last major setup that I'm going to talk about is the heat burst setup. And this one, if you haven't activated your heat yet, this is absolutely nasty. It's super duper cheap bullshit. I do this all the time, and it's a ton of free damage. It's crazy. So the idea is after a tornado, you do your forward, forward, forward tailspin. and you do that into a heat burst, and then you key charge afterwards. So, tailspin, micro dash heat burst, key charge. So now I'm key charged. I still have the advantage because the other player's tech rolling or getting up or whatever, and I have access to my heat smash. And heat smash is pretty difficult to avoid, and it's plus 10 on block. Which means that if you can get the other player to block your heat smash, you can enforce a 50-50 launch. You can 50-50 them with down 3+4 can-cans versus back 4. Both of them, it's a mid-low launch. Just pick your poison. There's nothing the other player can do about it. They can't avoid this because you're so plus. In this case, if the other player tech rolls right away, you can just heat smash right away and then, do your mix-up. Usually people will just get hit by the can-cans, because what are you gonna do? But again, back 4 is your mix. Now, the player won't always just tech roll right away. Usually, they will, absolutely not do that. But even if they do, stay down and take a little while to stand up, it's so easy for you to just kind of you just key charge and just wait for them to get up off the ground and then heat smash them. They're either going to block it or they're going to get hit by it. And in either case, they get hit by it, you get a ton of damage. If they block it, you get the launching 50-50. So I highly recommend trying this. It's super duper cheap. It's a lot of fun. The last piece of setup information that I've got for you in terms of these normal juggles is this. You can combine the heat burst and plunge setups to create a plunge setup where you also have access to heat smash. So this is the plunge setup. You got your plunge options. If you know the other player will tech roll, you can do your whole thing with the auto counter launch and have it track and all that stuff. I'm not going to relist all the other options, but you also have heat smash, so you can also try to apply a version of the heat burst setup. So when you're doing the heat smash here, you don't have as many frames after a plunge as you do after a heat burst, so it doesn't have as absolute a coverage. It kind of just works like your key charge options do after a plunge, but let me just demonstrate it here. So if I do tech, the heat smash, if you do key charge heat smash right away, is completely uninterruptible. There's nothing I can do about it. I would just have to take the hit, or I would have to block it, and then take the 50-50 launch afterwards. Just like with the plunge heat charge options though, if I properly time a wake-up kick, I can interrupt the key charge, and they won't be able to get the heat smash out. This is awkward to do. You do have to time it properly, so I think it's unlikely that this is going to happen in a real match, but it is something that you need to consider, I suppose. If this is really something that happens, then you are doing the plunge setup, so if you suspect that the other player is going to stay on the ground, and this includes if they're going to do a wake-up kick, you just do a delay forward 3+4, and it'll hit them on the ground. I've not really messed with this setup much in matches, but it does seem, in theory, like it would be really, really scary because it's a really ambiguous situation. Asuka kind of has an option to blow up any decision the other player makes, like just absolutely launch them out of their asshole. But Asuka herself doesn't really have to commit to anything in particular because she has Heat Smash and Heat Dash in her pocket. Like at any point she can just make you block that stuff, and then you're really in for it. So I think that this setup has potential. So that's it for Oki and setups after Asuka's normal juggles. What I want to touch on now, this is the second to last topic for this video, is I want to talk about the extra Oki options that you can apply when you have an Insta-Tornado launch. So, for example, Eyes and Swing. After Eyes and Swing, this is your juggle, and after the 4-2-1, you can apply your basic Oki, so you can run them down with your golden Oki and all that. But if you want to get a little bit more out of the early tornado combo, then instead of forward 2, you can do one of the following. First up, if they tech roll, then you can do a 50-50 tech trap with a 4-3 cancel. So here's what that looks like. We do that into down 4-3, and then I do a 4-3 cancel into 1+2 or down 1+2. If they tech roll, this is a tech trap. They can't get away from it. They just have to guess. If the other player doesn't tech roll after the down 4-3, then you can do 4-3+4 for max ground ticket damage. Like that. Get an extra 21 damage. It's pretty good. You can also do a down 4-3 to float, but it's tricky. It's kind of inconsistent based on like axis or range, and the timing is really tight, so I wouldn't recommend it. The last good option that you have here, if the other player is going to tech roll or back quick roll, you can do forward 3 2 spins. And that's going to be uninterruptible. If they tech roll or back quick roll, they won't be able to sidestep it or anything like that. And on block, it does 10 chip damage. Yeah, so 10 chip damage, which is really chunky. That's actually more than the normal forward 2 ender that you would do in that juggle. And it's +6 on block. And if you're feeling spicy, you can just let the whole unblockable rip if you think that the other player is respecting you. The last thing that I'm going to touch on is ultimate tackle, because you're going to be doing ultimate tackle from a lot of your setups, and so it's good to know what your Oki looks like after ultimate tackle as well, even though it's technically not a juggle, obviously. So this is really simple. First option is to just sidestep left and wait. If you sidestep left, then all of the other players' wake-up attacks will whiff. Wake-up kicks, recovery kick, and spring kick, they'll all whiff. If they do wake-up kicks or a recovery kick, then you can easily, after you sidestep left, punish with down back 4-3 for an absolutely massive, gnarly launch. If you do a launch into this setup and you whiff punish a wake-up kick with that, the round is over. That's it. If the other player does a spring kick, it's a bit more awkward. Because you'll get like a back turn launch like that. That's fine. You can also do this. Back 2-1-4 into crouch cancel 4-3+4. As far as I can tell, that will pretty consistently hit at a side back turn angle where the whiplash hit won't knock down. So that's all guaranteed, if you recognize that. So that's cool. That'll work. If the other player stays on the ground, then you can do your simple mix. Whoops. Well, you actually have them stay on the ground. So down back 3 versus 3+4 is pretty good. Both of them will hit grounded if the other player just stays on the ground. If they're just like sitting there, even though you're doing a sidestep left, if they're just gonna stay there, it's like, oh well, just dump the key charge on like a down back 3 or do 3+4, and it's pretty low risk, and that'll work as a mix-up. It'll hit them on the ground. The other thing that you can do, if you don't want to put yourself in that ambiguous like sidestep left and wait for the other player to do something situation, if you're not sure they're going to take the bait or anything like that, you can just do the key charge tackle into down back 3, and this will interrupt the normal wake up kicks, and may also hit them as a counter hit low if they stand straight up or wake up backwards. It's a bit difficult to time, you kind of have to mash it out, but it can interrupt the wake up kicks. This will lose to recovery kick and the spring kicks, because those are significantly faster and the recovery kick low crushes, but that's okay. You know, you're not gonna be hurting much after that. That's not a big deal. And that's finally it for now. Pat yourself on the back. If some of this was hard for you to follow, I want to remind you that I do have a little text-based document linked in the description of this video, so that might be more digestible for you. So give that a look if you want. You're probably going to need to review some of this stuff. So if you're thinking about implementing some of this tech, definitely give that a look for sure. At some point, I will be making a video for Oki options after almost all of Asuka's other knockdowns. So do stay tuned for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to look at how we can maximize damage after everything. So that's going to be awesome. Hopefully it won't be so disgustingly long-winded like this video has become. Thank you for watching, if you've made it all the way through all of that. Let me know what you think, if these setups and this information is doing anything for you, or if you figure something else out that I may have missed or something. If you aren't in the Asuka Discord, definitely join that. There's a link for that in the description too. It's the best place to mingle with other genius Asukas and talk tech just like this. A lot of this stuff is boring in the Asuka Discord. I don't just lab everything out myself. Until next time, thanks for watching.